Alright, well, back before the World Series this year in 2015, I made a bunch of videos about Back to the Future and how it tied into the Chicago Cubs and also the Kansas City Royals. I said there was a bunch of different reasons why I thought the Kansas City Royals were going to win. A lot of it tied into Pope Francis. A guy dressed as the Pope caught the ball on 6-6 this year. A home run ball of Salvador Perez. I said something significant will be with Salvador Perez in the World Series. He ended up being the MVP of the World Series. But anyway, but what was interesting about this World Series was that uh, the one this year began on October 27th, but the Royals hadn't won for 30 years, and they won in 1985 on October 27th. Now that is the day that on Back to the Future Part 3, that is the last day of the movie. That's when Marty goes back and the DeLorean gets destroyed by the train, and then Doc Brown comes back in the train and tells him, the future is what you make it, blah, 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 blah. And I've talked a lot about this day as well, dealing with Philadelphia. I mean, just think about the founding of our nation. A lot of significant events dealing with Philadelphia. But Philadelphia turned 333 years old this year in 2015 on this date. On this day right here, 85, they were 303 years old, similar to 33. So anyway, I took a look back at this movie again. For one of the reasons that I did that was because of this game right here. The score totaled up to 85, kind of like 1985. I've been talking about the 1985 Bears and how they're coded to the Kansas City Chiefs. The last time the Royals won was 30 years ago in 1985, and then the Super Bowl that season was in 1986, and the Bears won that season 46-10 against the Patriots. They were using the new 46 defense, the revolutionary 46 defense. Chicago adds up to 46. But I talked about Jamal Charles being hurt against the Bears this year, and a ton of other stuff if you go back and watch my previous videos. In this game, there was a lot of interesting events that happened as well. Alabama was 13-1, kind of like 131. They even add up to 13-31 when you add them up in gematria, or add up Alabama and gematria. Alabama scored 45 points. The date numerology of the Super Bowl this year adds up to 45. So there we go. 2 plus 7 plus 20 plus 16 equals 45. But their ending records here are very interesting as well. They're both 14-1, similar to 141. And that stuck out to me because the date numerology of the 1985 World Series, 10 plus 27 plus 19 plus 85, adds up to 141 as well. Also in gematria, the word plutonium, right, the gas for time travel, plutonium adds up to 141. Also interesting, they use plutonium in the atomic bombs. It was actually plutonium 239. We're in the 239th year of the United States. And the atomic bombs in Japan were in 1945. Just another interesting thing. Alabama has 45 points. Also in regards to that, World War III, if you read it out, adds up to 141 as well. Also, if you recall, in the 2015 World Series, I said Game 1 was on October 27th. So exactly 30 years after the Royals won the World Series, Game 1 of the World Series was again, or whatever. But what happened in this game was the game went 14 innings, and then the Royals ended up scoring the one run to win in the 14th. So it was literally, the score was even 4-5, and then it was 14th inning, one run, right? 141. Also, if you don't believe me, check out this in Back to the Future Part 3, the day that Back to the Future ends, and Marty goes back to 1985, the day that the Royals won the World Series, and he gets in his Toyota here. Look on the front here. It even has KC on the front. These are KC daylighters. But I mean, just interesting, they would be on his deal. They're telling you that the Royals won the World Series. Interesting, too, the license plate on his thing there is 2 back 806. If you do these in gematria, would be the second letter, so this would be 2, 1, and 11. If you add them up, it adds up to 30. The Royals hadn't won in 30 years. The Bears won 30 years ago. The Kansas City Chiefs just shut out Houston 30-0. The last time the Chiefs won the Super Bowl was 46 years ago, just like Chicago adds up to 46. The score was 23-7, that adds up to 30. They're moving on to play the Patriots. The Patriots last game, they lost to the Dolphins 20-10. That adds up to 30. Also interesting in the the World Series this year, like I said, the game 1 was won in the 14th inning. 14th inning adds up to 91, just like Chicago Cubs. Chicago Cubs the small way even adds up to 46, just like Chicago. Just like Marty McFly adds up to 46. And I'll come back to this later on because Obama's coming to Omaha, Nebraska today. And an interesting thing happened during the Chiefs-Houston game. Just makes it stand out to me a little bit. But in regards to the Alabama game here again, so Alabama was 13-1, right? Kind of like 131. This number has been popping up a whole lot. Super Bowl adds up to 131. A ton of other 31 references. Prince Charles adds up to 131. If you write out the word 131, it's 107. And King Charles equals 107. Also, Joseph Biden adds up to 107. And I've talked about the assassination of Barack Obama. He would be the next president. If Queen Elizabeth dies, Prince Charles will be the next king. Also interesting to point out, John F. Kennedy equals 131. If you write out his full name, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, he adds up to 107. Also in this game here, Alabama's last touchdown that they scored with 1:07 left in the fourth. And look how long the drive even took. 3 minutes, 33 seconds. And that stands out because when I started talking about the 131 and 107 a lot, it was when the Philadelphia police officer supposedly got shot in his car. And CNN had the video up, and the video began at 1:07 p.m. And then the video was even 1:07 long. And it's only a couple videos back. You can go back and watch that if you don't understand what I'm saying. There's a lot more to it than that. But it's also interesting because it put them up. The score was 44-33 before the extra point then, which put them up by 11 points. 11 has been a pretty significant number. I noticed around Alex Smith. He even got hurt when he played for the 49ers on the game that was on 11-11. He's in his 11th season. He wears number 11. And then, of course, the score 85. Deshaun Watson, the quarterback for Clemson, even had a wristband on that had 85 on it the whole game. But anyway, all of this made me want to go back and rewatch this movie. Also do a little bit more research into the number 131 and 107. And this movie actually has connections to the 131. And the reason I thought of part 3 is because Back to the Future 2, where they go to 2015, it's over, right? That day is over. Back to the Future Day is over. So now it's time to move on to the third part of the movie. Right off the bat, though, at the very end of part 2, Doc Brown, the lightning strikes the DeLorean, and he gets sent back to January 1st, 1885. January 1st, 1885 just so happens to be 131 years ago. Interesting. If you write out Back to the Future Part 3 in Gematria, it adds up to 107. Also, in regards to today is January 13th, 113, right? But in other countries, they write the date as this, 13-1. So today's date could be that. Interesting, similar to 131. Also, when I talked about how the World Series this year was coded around Pope Francis and also Queen Elizabeth, she's the royal. The Royals won the World Series, the 111th World Series. They even won it on November 1st, 11-1, like 111. Matt Harvey he wouldn't come out of the game, and that's why the Mets lost there at the end, supposedly. He pitched 111 pitches. The opening of the World Series was the in-the-park home run. One run on the first pitch in the first, 111. There's a lot of 111 references. Alex Smith for the Chiefs. His name adds up to 111. The Chiefs qualified for the playoffs 1 month and 11 days before the Super Bowl. Also, Abraham Lincoln, in regards to Obama being assassinated again, Abraham Lincoln died exactly 1 month and 11 days after beginning his second term. And Queen Elizabeth also born on the 111th day. I've covered this over and over and over, but Queen Elizabeth became queen on this day to the day that Back to the Future ends in 1985. It's a span of 33 years, 8 months, 21 days. So she was queen for 33 years, the day that Back to the Future ended. She was also born on this day. So the day that Back to the Future ended, she was also 59 years old, 6 months, and 6 days. Just interesting because in Gematria, if you write out Pope Francis adds up to 59, just like Back to the Future. Just like Kansas City Royals. I mean, it all ties in here, 59. But Pope Francis came to the United States on 9/22 this year. Interesting, if you go to January 31st of this year, similar to 131, it's a span of 131 days as well. So just interesting. His visit to 131 is 131 days. Also, in regards to today, which also could be written similar to 131, it's a span of 3 months and 22 days. A skull and bones number or whatever. Also, just interesting. 113 days on 113. Tomorrow will be 114 days on 114 and so on, you know. Also in Back to the Future 3 then, there's a decent amount of 11 references in this movie. And like we just had the Chiefs, the opening play, the guy ran from the A of Texans and he ran it back in 11 seconds. A is the first letter, similar to 111, but also it was 11 seconds. The last time the Chiefs won a Super Bowl was on 1/11, kind of like 111, which is also the 11th day. But she tells Doc Brown here when she was 11 she had diphtheria, and that's when her dad taught her about these telescope or whatever. But earlier in the movie, when they're going to dig the DeLorean out of the cave, Doc Brown mentions that when he was 11 years old was the first time he'd ever read Jules Verne. I believe it was The Journey to the Center of the Earth. Might have been a different book, but yeah, so when he was 11, he read that. And this whole movie, like he gets with her, and they both love Jules Verne, and then he gets with her and has kids at the end of the movie, and they even name the kids Jules, and the other kid's name is Verne. Interesting, because in Gematria, Jules Verne adds up to 131. Jules Verne, 131. And I'm not really sure what the deal is with Jules Verne. I'm still working on that. But interesting, he died on March 24th, 1905. The Super Bowl this year will be 46 days before the 111th anniversary of his death. Both interesting numbers I've been mentioning over and over surrounding the Super Bowl and the Kansas City Chiefs. Chicago equals 46. The word sacrifice equals 46. JFK even died at the age of 46. And of course, he was also 44 years older than Obama. So 44 years older than the 44th president. JFK was the 44th term president. Obama's even the 57th term president. If you write out the word 57, it adds up to 131. He was even born in the year 61. 61 adds up to 131. Interesting, too, with all these Civil War type coding they've been doing. Maybe it isn't about assassinating Obama. It really sure seems to be that way. Maybe it's just something else dealing with the Civil War. But we have all the theater shootings and whatnot this year. But, 1861 is when the Civil War began. But I'm running out of time here. I'm going to make a part 2. So see you in part 2.